Flipping through horror game recommendations on the Xbox Store can be a dangerous game to play. Indie horror games and horror movies are already a minefield of shovelware and cheap, low-effort shock schlock, so it's easy to get burnt by one of these games, even if it's just under $5. But every now and again, you'll find something perfectly fine, which is often good enough if you're just gearing up for Halloween and need something new and short to scratch that horror itch without it taking over your life. Don't Knock Twice, or DKT as we'll call it from now on, is one such experience I found while surfing the Xbox Store. DKT, being an in-engine 3D game, is a bit of a departure for developer Wales Interactive, who usually makes FMV horror games with branching story paths. DKT is their take on the PT formula, a haunted house walking sim with environmental puzzles, jump scares, and all that good stuff. The experience will feel familiar if you've played a lot of these middling PT clones recently, like I have, but the game plays out its genre tropes serviceably enough, and its short runtime makes it a nice breather in between demanding go-big experiences like Visage or Resident Evil Village, perhaps. And even its most unfortunate moments like fumbling jump scares or glitching out become their own peculiar brand of entertainment. So let's get stuck in like a hatchet through a door. Man, I guess if that's your MMO, knocking once isn't necessary, much less twice. Am I right? You officially have my attention, DKT.
Here's Johnny!
So if you're hearing the name Don't Knock Twice rattle around in your memory bank like so much loose change, then you're likely remembering the 2017 movie of the same name. Unsurprisingly, the game is loosely based on the movie, but it actually came out 7 months after the theatrical release. Now this disparity between release dates is a little strange, especially if you lived through the early 2000s surge of mediocre cash grab licensed movie games. Because it wasn't rushed out to meet a theatrical release like these old cash grabs, you'd reasonably expect that DKT would be polished and maybe even a little deeper than the source material, but it's a fairly stripped down affair, using the basics of the movie's plot and some of its set design. Let's briefly review the movie as it provides a good point of reference for how well the game tells its own version of the same basic story arc. The movie stars nerd royalty Katie Sackhoff is a beleaguered sculptor and recovering drug addict who's making a genuine attempt to get her life together. She moves out to an obnoxiously lavish countryside mansion with her supportive husband to focus on her work. She's also trying to reconnect with her daughter Chloe, whom she gave up to foster care years ago. There's a whole plot thread about how Chloe grew up a troubled teen who supposedly harassed a woman into suicide by calling her a witch and a child abductor after several kids went missing near her home. A vengeful spirit now stalks Chloe and follows her into Jess's home as they try to mend their relationship. This presence is a real and present danger, and represents the strain of their relationship. The pieces for a pretty decent B-movie are here, but the execution is just so rushed that the twists underwhelm. That said, there's some great camera work and a really fun continuous shot with tons of moving parts, so it's often fun enough for what it is. DKT the Vigia game certainly apes this general structure, but with much less flourish. Both movie and game sort of vomit out eventually that the evil presence in the house is probably the Baba Yaga, the child-eating witch of Russian folklore. While the fun of the movie is the characters having to learn to play by her metaphysical rules, the game just sort of shoves Wikipedia entry-style notes all over the house telling background lore about the Baba Yaga, but never justifying specifically why she of all creatures is here, much less why she's at this specific house on the exact night Jess's husband is out of town.
What do you want in writing?
No need.
The movie has one big contrivance to justify the witch's conclusion, but at least it does the bare minimum. The game, not so much. It doesn't help either that the witch is essentially a non-issue throughout the game, mostly just chasing Chloe around the house off screen and making Chloe text you for help via your trusty, extremely outdated cell phone. So, if the monster kind of sucks in this game, you might be asking, so where's the fun and why should I care to hear any more? Well, you shouldn't. Fuck off.
Just fuck off!
Nah, I'm kidding. I know you can tell from my raspy baritone that I'm incredibly handsome and smart, and you just want to support greatness wherever it arises, so you'll stay tuned. I just know it.
Oh, you're using your made-up names.
then I am swabble double wobble gobble flibber blah blah blah.
Oh, sorry, you meant the real reason. Gotcha. Okay, fine. The real reason is that while the game's villain stays in the background, the stars of the show become the house's design and the incredible atmosphere created by the audio work. The most interesting audio choice is the lack of voice acting, as Chloe texts you either her angry outburst or cries for help. It's kind of funny to think about no matter how angry or scared she is, her grammar and punctuation are impeccable. And as an English major, I like her style. Now, obviously the lack of voice acting is a budget consideration, but it smartly puts all the players' attention on what they're experiencing in mise-en-scène, without any external input or other characters stopping the game to tell you how or what to feel. Most impressive are the sound effects, which are full and rich. Supernatural phenomena are accompanied by great string work, and there's some creative and deep sound mixing that really maximizes the tension. It's a good thing, too, that the audio is so immersive, because the game's visual presentation needs the help. Maybe I'm being harsh, and my 2022 eyes are telling lies, but there are a fair few places where the textures just look flat and the environments lack color contrast. Now, this may just be a hazard of trying to emulate PT's plain architecture, but I wish the game had more areas that popped, like the chapel area, the courtyard with its statues and brambles, or this rundown room in the basement that has what looks like a pit to hell beneath it. When the game tries, it looks gritty and creepy and effective, but there are quite a few bland areas. One cool detail, though, is how the art team lifted areas straight from the movie, like this side hallway with a frosted glass door, which has a fun little gag scare in both the game and movie. The game's opening area is actually this room in the movie where Chloe lies down while Jess is outside checking on a disturbance. Other fun callouts are how Chloe gets put in cages. I know, so fun. And how Jess uses a hatchet to get through locked doors, which is a good segue into how you move about the house and what else you're doing while you're there. Now, like I just said, you start out in a sort of lounge area that's lifted directly from the movie. You'll be quickly introduced to several important features, one helpful and one nearly pointless. You receive a panicked, angry text from Chloe, and you're told to light up a candle from the fireplace so that you can go find her. Now, you can light candles in the room and everywhere else in the house that you see them, but I never found the game dark enough to need this extra light, nor did it produce any gameplay advantage, so I'm at a loss for why this was included at all. There's also an achievement for not lighting any candles in your playthrough, so there's effectively zero incentive to engage this mechanic. Now, if you find any use for it, feel free to comment and enlighten me, no pun intended, as I'm curious as to the thought process here. Anyway, while the candles don't make any sense, the other feature introduced to the player in this opening room is a helpful one, namely audio cues like phantom knocks or other ambient noises that tell you which direction to go next. Now, I like this system a lot better than the glowing waypoints you see in many other titles. It's subtle but effective at nudging you in the right direction. The game confused me sometimes, I'll admit, as places I needed to look to trigger story events were easy to miss, sometimes way up high or in the periphery of where the game had me walking. But the manor grounds and house interior encourage you to start mentally mapping them out to make your backtracking for clues easier, making you really comprehend the space so that you can know where to go generally, but also what alternate paths are available to take when the house shifts to impede your progress. Exploring the house becomes a character study of sorts, as the house is the most dynamic aspect of the game, sometimes helpful, sometimes antagonistic, but always begging to be known further. Its intricate structure also acts as a maze hiding certain magical trinkets in its dark corners. Retrieving these is your primary goal. Once found, these trinkets release their essence and reappear in the basement chapel to complete a ritual, which will supposedly banish the witch for good, or so you're told. Each item has some type of gimmick or environmental interaction needed to release it. The solutions are simple, but they differ enough in their required contextual actions that they feel more elaborate than they actually are, like how you have to scan a wall for loose bricks and pull them one by one to reveal what's behind them. There's a cool interaction with a mirror I won't spoil here either, but suffice it to say, the puzzle design is classic, tried and true stuff that made traversing the house interesting and rewarding. Most rewarding of all is how you open locked doors like your Jack in The Shining. You can pick up hatchets throughout the house and use them like the most badass keys you've ever seen. chopping the padlocks off of cabinets or chopping the doorknobs off locked doors to get through. Unlike the candles, which feel like pointless homages to Amnesia the Dark Descent, the hatchets play up a cool moment in the movie and justify themselves as a legitimate badass feeling mechanic, which is the sweet spot for an adaptation. The game does more with less, and that's a high compliment for a team that's clearly working within their means. But having gushed about the simple pleasures the game offers, there are some rough spots which you really need to be aware of too. The controls are the most basic offenders. I love the hatchet so much because it let me take violent revenge on all the doors that were such a pain to open. Opening doors doesn't just require a click, like an activate button. It's a click that needs to be held and dragged to simulate how the motion would feel in real life. Too bad it's clunky and tedious, requiring awkward angling to even get the door to start opening, and even then the whole process still takes so long I figured I'd have to pause to get fitted for dentures and fill some prescriptions for Rogaine and Viagra, because I'd be so old from how long it took, because it's so slow. You get it. You get what I'm saying. The last bad news I must mention is a spoiler-free complaint about how glitchy the last sequence is. I got so ticked off I just had to laugh, and actually brought my wife in to watch too, and she laughed at me all the more as I suffered through a cacophony of bad scripting errors. So here's what happened. Once you get to the end of this pathway, a cage is supposed to come down and enclose you, but the way it fulfills the trigger is the problem, as it only happens if you cross a certain threshold, not whether you've entered a very specific area beyond the threshold over which the cage actually spawns. So if I didn't place my character just right in the specific area as I crossed the threshold, the cage would often come down halfway around me and leave me stuck, or would spawn in random assets like wood nailed into the cage that looks intentionally crafted, but doesn't break away from hatchet damage, leaving me, you guessed it, trapped again. It was genuinely amusing how elaborate and yet totally non-functioning these different cage configurations were, almost like it was a janky prank. But it didn't stop there. If you could get into the right spot and have the cage fit around you properly, a door appears and wants you to knock twice to open it. Unfortunately, the knocker rarely registers correctly, meaning the scene won't progress and you can't complete the game. At first, I thought this was another side effect of the crappy analog controls, like the door opening, but no, knocking that works and knocking that doesn't looks the same no matter what. It's just a matter of the game randomly deciding which of these inputs it will accept. In each of my playthroughs, it took me 4 total checkpoint loads to get the cage to spawn correctly and or the knocks to register. So yeah, this game has some rough edges, and it can be a real witch to contend with. So, I guess the only important question that's worth asking now becomes, is this game's particular balance of triumphs and tragedies worth your time and money? Well, I picked this up for about $6, I think, which had to be on sale since it's now selling for $12.49 on the Xbox store. Now, people can charge whatever they want for a product like this, and it's your prerogative to pay as much as you want. But I can't in good faith recommend this one if you're paying $10 or more for it. It's very short, and while you can retrieve the magical items in any order you choose, it's still pretty linear and doesn't really provide a diverse enough experience to encourage repeat playthroughs. Not to mention, there are other experiences of a higher quality going for as low as $5, like 2022's little indie hit Nightmare of Decay. Now, I can't be too critical of DKT because it was cheap, and sometimes it's just nice to relax with a simple game with a good atmosphere. Chasing Static was another game that wasn't terribly scary, but I had a great time in its unsettling yet transfixing world. But I can absolutely imagine in DKT's case that many gamers will be much less forgiving of the glitches, the lack of genuine scares, the blandness of the plot and its villain, and the relatively straightforward, brief nature of the thing. And I also wish the game did more with the great hook of you playing a mother overcoming her demons to save her daughter from the anti-mother Baba Yaga, a child-eating demon. But alas.
Alas, poor Yorick.
All that aside though, I found the informed nature of my second playthrough even more enjoyable than the first, and have even been tempted to check out Wales Interactive's other game Made of Scare, which looks like a pretty interesting gothic period piece to me. Now, sure, maybe games like these are just snacks in between main courses, but most snacks are delicious and leave you wanting more, so keep that in mind if you dare to enter the haunted house of DKT and bandy wits with bitch tits to save your ungrateful daughter. All I'm saying is, don't knock it until you've tried it. Or, don't knock it until you've twiced it. Like, played it twice. You know what I mean? Sorry. You know what? I'm not sorry. I have no guilt or quality assurance of wordplay. That's just an occupational hazard you're going to have to accept if you watch these videos. But what I did make sure was top quality for you is my biggest video yet, which I will now shamelessly plug for you. It took me the better part of 2022 to polish up for you, and on October 28th, I'll be releasing my official Halloween video, which will be an entire franchise retrospective on Alone in the Dark, including the original survival horror series that spans 3 decades and counting and inspired Resident Evil, to the So Bad They're Good movies by Uwe Boll, and the people who dare to be his co-workers.
Fuck yourself.
Had a lot of fun making it, and I'm pretty excited to share it with you. But wait, there's more. In case you were worried I was sick of hearing myself talk, I also contributed a section to the Halloween video my bud Cult of the Cyber Skull is releasing on the 28th as well. It's a comprehensive look at one of the most ambitious horror games of the last decade, and one we actually mentioned earlier, Visage. Cyberskull's a good dude and always good fun to watch, so make sure to tune into his video that day as well. Have a horribly happy Halloween season, and I'll see you October 28th.